Let's call the August 2019 school board meeting to order. September. Well, I'll probably do September instead then. Okay, let's start with the flag salute. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brett.
Pray with me. Father, we'd like to thank you for all the blessings that you have bestowed on us each and every day. We take our blessings for granted sometimes. Please give us the patience to stop, reflect, and be thankful. As our fall sports hit the ground running, please keep our staff and students and patrons safe, whether they participate and or travel to and from these events. We also appreciate our veterans and are thankful for the sacrifices they make or have made for our country. Keep our active military safe and bring them home soon. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Brett. Be seated. Roll call, Jan.
Dr. Kincaid?
Here.
Mr. Newsom?
Here.
Mr. Riley?
Here.
Mrs. True?
Present.
Nancy Zimmershed?
That it? Okay. Next item is under presentations, the Poe High Student Council homecoming activities. Somebody from the Stuco is going to talk to us
Our first student presentations for the new school
for the
year.
whole year.
Okay. Hi.
Awesome, hey.
Right.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Lainey Varner. I'm going to be the president. I am the president this year. And so this is Grant Jackson, our secretary, Karis Branstad, our treasurer, and Cale Gilbert, our vice president. And our historian is Peyton Little, but he's playing football today. And so we're here to talk about homecoming, which is our next big event, and Grant's going to talk about that.
Okay, so homecoming's coming up soon. We're in charge of putting together a homecoming rally that's for all the students to attend to. We work the homecoming parade, directing it and everything, which we have all the classes make a float and all the clubs. And then we also direct the coronation before the football game, where we have all the classes with elected people walk, and then we do the queen stuff and all that. So we're excited for that, and we're trying to get stuff together now because it always comes up quicker than we think it will. So yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about Wild Week just real quick. So Wild Week is one of our next big events. It's going to be it's our philanthropy week, and so the whole entire week we're going to raise money for a charity, and we're getting all the details fine-tuned, but we are planning on giving all of our money to Peachtree Landing, which it'll stay local, so that's really good. And we're planning on having lots of student and community events. We're thinking on having a bingo / a raffle, and we normally have a dodgeball tournament, and we're thinking of having a game night. So we're trying to get lots of different interests out there, and so we just think it's going to be a lot of fun. So.
Any questions from the board? Hey, I will have to tell you all that I was highly impressed with the first PEP assembly. Karis, I thought you were a quiet little thing. She was amazing. All of you guys did a great job. Thank you for leading the PEP rally. Go Cats.
Thanks, guys. Any public comments, Betty?
No.
Good. Not having any public comments, we'll go on to item number 4. Report with potential board discussions. The alternative education plan. Carla Streeter, principal, is going to talk to us about it.
All right, let's see here. Do this. Alignment. Okay, I'm going to be fancy with this. Okay, the State Department comes out and does an evaluation every school year on our program, and there's three scores. You can get a 0, 1, or 2. A 0 is non-compliant, a 1 is compliant, and a 2 is actually effective, and then a 2 is highly effective. We scored a 76 out of 94 and achieved an effective rating. We were only 6 points away from being highly effective. These were our highly effective areas. Our ratio of students to teachers, we had an assistant, which we don't have right now, but we had an assistant which kept us from being non-compliant. And the type of our program that we have, which meets the 17 criteria for alternative education. Our standard services, our resources, the number of special education students, you can only have so many special education students per the number of kids that you have. I'll postpone that. Yeah. Amount of kids you have in your program. I think you can't have more than 10% of your total. The goals and objectives, the discipline, the selection, the way we select our students. We have the interview process. Our teachers were all certified. And we do professional development. We do PLCs. We take in at-risk students. We keep student records. We have student contracts when they start our program. We do an interview process, so our intake process, our choice in program, the community support with our PI partners, the community services, the positive behavioral interventions and supports, the demographic needs, the record keeping, the interactions with teachers, student progress and improvement, progress monitoring, the rigor of our program, our curriculum, our presentation. Those were all highly effective. Our effective areas were our program time. We meet state requirements, our activities that are offered, our educational options, the differentiated instruction, cooperative learning, student input, state standards, our response to interventions, frequency of counseling, community service, our life skills instruction, the curriculum, the enrichment, the financial reporting, the state reporting, and progress reporting. We were non-compliant. We didn't do a climate culture survey. We didn't know we had to do that. We do now, and we have one. Our development, updated graduation plans, and the career interest inventory, we weren't aware that we had to do ICAP, and so we hadn't done that. So we have a plan in place to do that. Audra Mason is going to take care of that for us. So next time, we will not be non-compliant in anything. And here's our plan to address the non-compliant areas. Our climate culture survey, we've got that set up the first quarter. And like I said, Audra's going to come over and do our ICAP for us. And then we have a career interest inventory also that our students will be doing. This is our current student data. Last year we had 65 graduates. Our current enrollment, we have 107 students this year. I have them sitting in the hallway. I could fill a whole nother building. We have 14 students that are actually involved in activities at the high school. We have people in band. We have several band members. We have football players. We have a couple of girls basketball players. We have a boys basketball player. We have track. We have soccer. We have somebody that's in the flag corps. I mean, we have a little bit of everything. We got a good variety. We have 13 that are going to Pioneer Tech part-time. They come to us half a day and go to VOTEC half a day. And then we have one right now that is doing concurrent enrollment at the University Center. So anybody got any questions for me about that?
So you've got 107 students with what, 1,300 roughly? So you can add 20, 25, and then you hit your 10% cap. I'm thinking 9 through 12, aren't we about 1,300 students?
Mm-hmm. I don't have room for that.
We would
But
have to get
that's
our
all
more
the state would
space.
allow you to have?
We're talking special education.
Special ed. is
I can only
10%.
have 10%, so I can only have 10 special education
Oh, in special ed,
students.
okay. It's
We
not
have to
total
be
number.
careful with that because they don't want it to be a dumping ground, you know? So we have to be really careful with our special ed numbers. But I could feel, I mean, if I had the teachers in the room, I have a waiting list right now. I have kids sitting in the hallway and I have a waiting list with about 15 kids on it.
That's
that's
where
what
I
I
was
was gonna
going with
ask.
it. There is
How
a
many are
waiting
there?
list.
Yes, and they call me I get phone calls every single day, every day. People wanting to come to Wildcat. And it's hard to turn them down, you know, but I just don't, right now, it's like, I just don't have, I don't even have enough computers. I have nowhere to put anybody. So I'm
So what
completely
could your
full.
107 possibly go up to if you had the facilities and the teacher?
Oh, I could easily probably add 25 more, easily. But I don't have, I mean, like I said, I don't have any room for them. There's no room in our building to.
So what do they do when you turn them down? Go to the high school or
A lot of them go to
Epic or homeschool?
Yeah. Some of them go to Share. I've been sending some out to Share. They've taken several of our kids since school started that I've sent out there. So I know it's hard to say no, especially when they come see me. It's hard to see their little face and tell them no, but you know, I just don't have, I can't do it. So.
Carla does a great job, and I've told the board before, I am convinced that that's why our graduation rate continues to increase, plus some protocols that have been put in at the high school, but in combo with both. We're very pleased, and we wish we could give you a lot more teachers.
No, and I appreciate y'all's support very much.
Things will turn around, and there won't be a teacher shortage at some
I hope
point.
so. I hope
And we
so.
can get these kids back.
I hope so.
I don't have a question for her, but just want to comment from us. You can go ahead and sit down if you like. But, you know, looking at the report you sent us earlier today, it said we're 100 short from last year.
99.
Okay, how many of them are like this? Is there 25 to 30, maybe 50 in Epic?
You know, we have been tracking that. It's hard for us to track unless it's listed in the comments of the records, if they went to a virtual charter, if they're homeschool. I had Betty and Kathy actually track at the beginning of this school year, and I think we got over 100 back from Epic this year that we've started out, but we don't know how many have gone out. And that's typically the case. It's back and forth. Everybody tries it and comes back, but we're really going to try to get a handle on how we can track that and have people put in the comments that, yes, they're going to Epic, or Epic has requested, so we'll know specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Carla? Thank you. Next on the agenda, reports with potential board discussion, continuing the ACT district selection process, how we reached the decision, or the administration did, to use the ACT as our selection. Instead of Barbara Cusick, it's going to be Betsy Easley is going to tell us about it.
So, let me get.
Betsy, was this a surprise?
Yeah,
Okay, way to wing it.
Barbara's not feeling very well.
Yes.
So, whatever, I can talk. So the state requires us to have a review committee made up of 2 parents, 2 students, and 2 teachers to discuss why we have chosen the ACT rather than the SAT as our state test. So last week, I met with Mr. Dilbeck and 2 of our high school teachers, Mrs. Poet,
As a parent, Mrs.
yes, as a
Okay.
parent, and our other parent, it's gonna slip my mind now, and then Lainey Varner and Aaron Maloney as our 2 students. And we talked about why we chose ACT rather than SAT. And so I've got some bullet points up here just to kind of talk about what our committee was about. We are required to provide community stakeholders with an opportunity to provide input about the district's intent to administer the ACT. So we created a parent survey and emailed it out to all the parents of our junior students to get some information back from them. The results that we've had back from that survey so far have been completely supportive of us choosing the ACT rather than the SAT. We did talk about, you know, in that transition period from when we were moving from Common Core to Oklahoma academic standards, there was a gap of time for a while when our state was trying to decide what it was going to do, and in that gap, we followed ACT academic standards. I would say probably all of our core classes at the high school were really geared towards our kids being successful on the ACT. We've had an ACT prep course for, well, probably close to 15 years, I think, at the high school. We used to be an SAT national test site, but we have had so little demand from the students for a test that we don't even offer the SAT any longer. We offer the ACT only. so many of our kids are taking the ACT rather than the SAT. Most colleges that want the SAT are on the coasts, or some of the private schools in Texas, like I think Baylor will take the SAT, but most of those schools will also take the ACT. It's an either or. So really, our kids are coming to us with questions about, how do I do well on the ACT? How do I prepare for that? Can you help me with some questions on that particular test? For us at the high school, the two parents said that both of their kids were focused on taking the ACT and had never even really questioned taking the SAT. We talked about the format differences between the two tests. The skills and content are very similar on both tests. The setup is a little bit different. The ACT has 4 tests, as you know, plus the writing, and the SAT has a verbal section, which is a kind of a reading English test, and then they have a math test, and they are now adding a writing portion. So we were all in agreement that this is what we know, and this is what our kids are looking for, and this is what they're being tested on, and so we're going to continue to use the ACT rather than the SAT. Any questions about that?
Good. Nope.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next is the superintendent's report with potential board discussion. Shelley's going to review all the new and revised board policies.
Okay, we only have like 34, so I am going to give you just as brief of a comment as I can to help you get the gist of the policy. Central administrators know their policies inside and out. I have a broad knowledge of all the policies. Some of these policies, most of these policies were changed because of state statute. Some were changed because of Oklahoma academic code. Some were district required changes, and some were changes suggested by our policy writers, Rosenstein, Fist, and Ringgold. And during Property Finance Committee, I shared just the policies that were recommended by RFR. So I've kind of color-coded these. If the title of the policy is in yellow, it's a required change. If it's green, it was suggested to us. And if it's in a lilac color, it's a change that we initiated. So in community relations, district-wide parental involvement, basically we just had to change the language from Elementary and Secondary Education Act with the reauthorization of Every Student Succeeds Act. So we just replaced ESEA with ESSA. District-wide parental involvement, this policy is required by Senate Bill 575, which requires that we have written consent for certain types of medical assessments, including telemedicine. House Bill 2339 requires written authorization for the parent or guardian before a student is vaccinated at school or on school grounds or receives a vaccine as part of a mobile vaccination effort. We do not do group vaccinations, but it's required by law that we have this in our policy. A district change within this same district-wide parental involvement, Parents' Bill of Rights, it talks about classes that we offer. We offer human growth and development class. In the policy, it's referred to as sex education. It is not a sex education class. It's just our nurses go in and talk to our students about different occurrences that go along with puberty and that kind of thing and how to protect themselves. So we want to change that in our policy. We've always called it human growth and development. This is one that was suggested by our policy writers: interference with the peaceful conduct of school district activities and protection from workplace harassment and violence. Basically, this policy, the recommendation is to outline an appeals process, and the appeals process comes to me. And if someone feels they've been harassed, they can bring it to me, and then I can defer it to a committee of other administrators. Section 3 is on administration, our federal programs. This is a new policy. This policy outlines procedures for the use of awards that we may sometimes receive through our federal programs or funding awards, and it requires the district title of the person responsible for the financial management procedures. And we named our Executive Director of Finance, Brenda Story, as the person who is responsible for the financial management. It is required because it's in yellow. Selection of a construction manager, we talked about this too. I know that you all were informed on this at OSSBA as well. This policy outlines the required elements the district selection procedure must meet. Continued on in administration, Safe School Committee and Healthy and Fit Advisory Committees. We also, in these committees, have to recognize and discuss reporting of suspected human trafficking. So that now has to be a part of our committees as required by Senate Bill 382. Dyslexic Awareness Program, this is a new policy. It's mandated by House Bill 1228. Each district must offer an annual dyslexic awareness training. Actually, it doesn't start until November 1 of this year, but we've already done it. So our teachers, you remember it in your GCN training. So we've already done our mandatory training on dyslexic awareness. Smoking, vaping, and the use of tobacco products. We have had this policy in place for several years. We have been tobacco-free, e-cigarette-free, vaping-free, 24/7, everywhere. Now it's law, it's required. Changes in this policy is it includes our patrons, our vendors, and any contractors we have 24/7. It also states that we will not accept gifts, donations, or materials or participate in activities sponsored by tobacco companies. And we have to provide cessation information and benefits to insurance coverage, which we do, but it is now included in the policy. Section 3, still on administration. This is one that was strongly recommended. Medical marijuana, hemp, and CBD. This policy specifies the circumstances under which medical marijuana may be possessed and administered on school property. And I think I told you in property, it has to be 0.3% or less in regard to CBD oil, and I'm talking about the presence of THC. Use of security cameras, this is a new policy. We didn't have to put this in place. The policy that was recommended had a lot of safeguards and procedures. We've just decided to have a policy statement and a policy purpose. Yes, we have security cameras, and they are installed for the safety and the protection of district property, and we record images to use for future investigations that possibly lead to criminal or non-criminal activity. Service animals. This was a policy in which we had an option. We adopted optional language specifies that the district will not allow emotional support animals or therapy animals as defined in this bill. We do have service animals. It is part of our policy, but therapy animals, we decided not to opt in those emotional support or therapy animals.
Can I go back to the medical marijuana one a minute?
Okay?
Isn't that the one, Don, we talked about in committee?
No, that was the one on testing student extracurricular.
No.
This is
This isn't
administrative.
the one that you're pulling out? Okay.
No. Yes, no, I pulled that one out. Now, there was a part of that one that's required, and I'll talk, it was just a change in the title. But yes, I pulled that option out. Personal wireless devices and electronic accounts. Part of this was required, and part of this we opted into. HB 1044 permits a school bus driver to use a handheld mobile telephone while driving in order to communicate as necessary if he's going back and forth from central dispatch or through an emergency as the police department. The part that was optional is the verbiage for student use. And you know, with our cell phone policy, we went ahead hadn't added this in. 2 statements. One is for students at the high school. During class time, from bell to bell, their cell phone devices, their personal devices are supposed to be off and stowed. For students at elementary and middle school, they may have them at school, but they are stowed from the time they come in until the time they leave the building. So those were optional pieces. Social media and social networking was a required policy. We already have a policy, but we had to add some definitions that prohibits abusive or offensive online behavior of employees at work or when engaged in work-related activities. And this is part of our policy anyway, but we have to say that district employees are discouraged from sharing content or comments containing obscene sexual content or links to obscene sexual content, abusive and bullying language or tone, encouraging illegal activity, and disclosure of information that is confidential by law, regulation, or internal policy. Before we kind of lumped that in, it was just stated that employees must use common sense while using social media. And don't think that we don't have social media issues all the time. And we do, and typically HR goes out and talks to the employee and asks them to take it down, and we haven't had a problem. Well, we had one problem, but it's been several years ago. So typically, this is not a problem. Section 4 is on instruction, Reading Sufficiency Act, testing and procedures. Senate Bill 601 has deleted the requirement that a majority of the day in grades K through 3 be focused on reading and math, and replaced with a well-rounded education that is focused on building deep foundations in reading and mathematics. And also the Act states that they are able to read and comprehend at grade level. And Terry, kindergartners are now included, right? And they weren't before. Okay, so what are you sharing in about kindergartners?
We do not have to report them as being placed on RSAs
Okay.
in the fall.
They don't have to be on the RSA. We don't have to contact their parents. They don't have to be on the RSA, Reading Sufficiency Act form. Okay, student promotion and retention and student pass and fail of a course kind of correlates to this. It correlates to the changes for RSA to changes in good cause exemptions for RSA. So that policy was just updated to correlate with the RSA policy. Section 5 is business management. This is a policy that we opted for, electronic records, contracting, and signatures. This policy establishes the protocols for authorizing and using electronic signatures. Many times, we now sign contracts through e-signatures, and it specifies who exactly can do that. As you know, our employees also sign their contracts online through our personnel. Everything else is things that we have required. Employee travel expense reimbursement, we just kind of changed the verbiage. Out-of-state travel beyond bordering states will be submitted to board members at board committee meetings. We don't do that at all board committee meetings. We take it to the curriculum committee, and it still said that it had to be board approved, and that's changed. So we just made the change in the policy to match our practice. Reimbursement for co-curricular activities expenses. As soon as practicable, following the approval, accurate, complete documentation along with attachments approved by a site administrator has been submitted to the district office. The district will then issue payment. So the supervisor of whoever turns in any expenses for any curricular or extracurricular activity, they have to have the correct documentation and must be approved by their own supervisor. Also, our guidelines for the sanctioning of student achievement programs and parent-teacher associations and organizations. It now reads, all booster clubs and parent-teacher associations must have a 501c3 status to become sanctioned by the Board of Education. Otherwise, these groups not having that status must be maintained within the district's activity count. And this has to be submitted to the district superintendent or the district designee, which in most cases will be Brenda. Allocation of funds to sites. Our policy said that all requisitions had to be made by April 1. We always ask that all PO requisitions be made by the Friday preceding spring break. So we just changed the policy to match our practice. And then activity funds. Requests for fundraising activities must be submitted on the appropriate form prior, and I almost put that in all caps, to the fundraiser starting, because as you know, we've had some issues with fundraisers occurring before board approval. As far as personnel goes, I've talked to you about this one when I talked about legislation. Substitute teachers, House Bill 1050, changed the number of days that a substitute may work in the district. If they have a lapse certificate or a bachelor's degree, they can go from subbing 90 days to 135. If they have a lapse or teaching certificate or possess, okay, that says the same thing, doesn't it? Okay, the first one, if they do not hold a lapsed teaching certificate or a bachelor's degree, 90 to 135. If they do hold a lapsed certificate or possess a bachelor's degree, 100 to 145. If they do have a valid certificate, which our contract subs do, they can teach every day that we are in school. And I think I've told you this before, we have to track this to make sure we're staying within the law. We never had a sub that even came close to the 90 or the 100 days. This gives us a little bit more flexibility, though, with the shortage of teachers. We also have a shortage of substitutes. Okay, the rest of these personnel changes were all our changes. Excess sick leave pay doc, we just changed to Executive Director of Human Resources, TLE, instead of Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. As we go through policies, we always find changes that need to be made. Teacher certification, stipend wording has been added to clarify that employees who receive emergency certification are ineligible for this stipend within the same school year. So let's say they're working on that degree prep, and we have made them emergency certified, we will pay them the next year. So if they have those 16 hours or 15 hours or whatever it says that we pay the stipend already under their belt, they have to have regular status. We will go the next year to pay that. And Curtis, actually what happened? We had an occurrence that came up.
Emergency?
The stipend on degree prep.
No, I think we think
Had some questions.
Working through it, we just, because you can be certified within a year with the emergency certification, but the intent was to make that for somebody who's moved into that position, moved into a bachelor's.
Not just working for us for a year on an emergency cert and then quit. They're staying with us. Okay, in regard to emergency leave, language, we removed language that indicated if a substitute is hired has been stricken. Emergency leave for support personnel is addressed in the negotiated agreement. This specific policy has to do with administrators and support personnel. We treat everyone the same. If emergency leave has been exhausted and an employee needs another day, I would get docked the sub pay, because it's hard to differentiate it whether you get a sub or not. It's just to maintain equity. As far as bereavement leave goes, our policy says that bereavement leave may be from 3 to 5 days. Now we're changing our verbiage. We're still going to allow that. This request has to be made in writing and approved by the Executive Director of Human Resources. Bereavement leave for certified personnel is addressed in the negotiated agreement, and we typically follow suit for administrators and support personnel as well. As far as students are concerned, this is a new policy. This is one that our nurses wanted enacted. This policy addresses public health concerns related to measles outbreaks. The policy includes symptoms, exceptions, educational services, and reporting. This is testing students with regard to the use of alcohol and illegal chemical substances. We had to add in the verbiage. is that so that our students have notice and knowledge of the ramifications concerning alcohol and illegal chemical substance use, possession, purchase, sale, or distribution when the student is on school property, at a school-sponsored event, in school vehicles, or going to or from a school-sponsored event. And that's just required that they must have knowledge and notice of these ramifications. Continuing on with students, this is the one we talked about, Mr. Riley, extracurricular activities, student alcohol and drug testing. We had to change the name of this policy. Previously, it was referred to as the activity student drug testing. Now it's extracurricular activity student drug testing. And this policy has been resigned in regard to testing consent and retest. And this was the policy that we had the option to hold off on. So I didn't even include that. I just include what we had to change.
So wait a minute. What are you asking us to approve a change to on this one?
The title. It's now called extracurricular activities, student alcohol and
The
drug
other part
testing.
you just struck.
Yes.
Okay.
And now it was previously called activity student drug testing.
All we're doing is changing the title.
Well, and there's information about consent and retests. If they get a false positive or whatever, they have the right to appeal for a retest. And it was in there anyway, but this just kind of outlines that verbiage a little bit clearer. Student transfers. This was previously titled open transfers, and it was deceiving because it talked about open transfers and emergency transfers within the same policy. So this is a required change that it's called student transfers. Added to the transfer form, list of reasons for cancellation of the transfer is the best interest of the district. And we also opted for open transfer rollovers. Once approved, once an open transfer is approved, they're valid for the student's duration of enrollment as long as that student remains a resident of the initial sending districts. Emergency transfers are only valid for the school year approved, and that's always been the case. So technically, there wasn't much of a difference between open transfers and emergency transfers as stated in the previous policy because you had to reapply for each time, and this is a required change. Still in students, abuse, neglect, exploitation, and trafficking. We had to change verbiage to clarify if any district employee having reasonable cause to believe that any student under the age of 18 is a victim of abuse, neglect, or exploitation shall immediately report the matter to the appropriate authorities. And there's additional verbiage. If the student is over 18, we get in contact with local law enforcement. Still in students, student behaviors. This was something that was recommended to us to be added by RFR, and probably because they've run up against these kinds of things. Under student behavior, there's a litany of behaviors that can result in different consequences. We added possession of synthetic urine, a warmer, or any other item with the intent to use that item to tamper with a drug or alcohol test, and distribution or claim distribution of supplements. So we'll add that in there. Directory information notice, we had to change the Elementary and Secondary Education Act with Every Student Succeeds, essentially ESEA to ESSA. It's just verbiage changes, nothing else changed. Still in students, administration of medication to minor students. Senate Bill 48 has added replacement pancreatic enzymes used for the treatment of cystic fibrosis to the types of medication a student may self-administer in school. And then Senate Bill 85 allows school personnel and only school nurses, is what we're opting in our policy, to administer an opioid antagonist to a student or other individual exhibiting signs of an overdose. So basically, Narcan. We talked to our school nurses, and they can get samples through a grant of Narcan. They would like it in there, so if they could save someone's life, that they have the option to use it. That part allows it. We don't have to adopt it. And it doesn't mean that we don't call EMT immediately, but if our nurses are there, they can administer. Foreign exchange student enrollment, we have some policies in regard to foreign exchange student. In our old policy referenced Ponca City Mid-High. We changed it to Ponca City East Middle School, and occasionally I should have highlighted that in purple. And then we have a wellness policy change with updates and verbiage providing more flexibility. And Brett, I'm going to let you address that.
Most of the changes in our wellness policy are just allow some more flexibility, change some verbiage from shall to may, and then move some things around to let it flow easier, separating some headings out and just put them in spots. The only real new change to the wellness policy is we added some PE activities versus computer time to our office.
Any questions about any of these policies? Betty has posted a summary of the policy on the district website, and you all have all had a summary of those, and we have the policies in full. And it's required by law that I present these in a public meeting, but you will not consider for adopting these policies until the October board meeting. So we still have time to discuss and become more familiar with the complete policies. Any questions from the board? All right.
Thank you, Shelley. Item 6, the consent agenda, agreement with commentary, number 1. Number 2, last month's minutes, contracts under $10,000. I tried to summarize those as briefly as I can. There were 25 contracts under $10,000. Software learning for $800. There were 5 or 6 teacher training workshops. Union and Garfield had a couple of them, about 15,000 combined. Behavior seminars for struggling learners, catapult learning, elevation subscription for all ELL educators. Another one for all educators was for teachers exposed to kids' trauma. We have the Payne Educational again this year. That's for 14 pre-K teachers to attend it. A couple of software IT issues. Manage Google accounts was one of them. Another was a software push for inventory management to laptops, about 2,500 total combined. One that I really liked, we're getting a grant for a baby lock embroidery machine at no charge. Okay, I'll just leave that one as it is. So I guess we'll do some embroidering.
High school FACS class, okay.
Okay.
Family and Consumer Science.
We also have an elective course at East Junior High, leadership course. It is an elective, and then we have some software that goes along with that course. We have another online curriculum that connects students with industry professionals. Some more math and English software for East Junior High. 4 or 5 activity funds, fundraisers for High Steppers, Vocal Music, Lincoln, and East. We have a small expenditure for some software under activity fund for the wrestlers that helps them collect the data on takedowns, reverses, etc. Then we have a $1,000 cleanup for Sullivan Stadium assigned to the Wrestling Booster Club, Takedown Club, for cleaning up the stadium after the home football games. Anybody have any questions on the contracts or the agreements? I think Don and I had them talk about every one of these in the Finance Committee meeting.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So the consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3. Have a motion to approve. Comments or questions? We have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Judy. Comments, questions from anybody? Call for the vote.
Mrs. True?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye. Item 7, action and motion will be required. Number 1, it's a lot of the standard monthly expenditures we have, the encumbrances in the endowment fund, change order listings, budget analysis reports, bond fund reports. Again, all these we talked about in the Finance Committee, some sanctioning requests for various booster clubs. I would like to comment on items L, M, and N. These are booster club fundraisers, requests for raffles, and activity fundraisers. It seems we're really getting a whole lot of demand for this type stuff, so we in the Finance Committee, Don and I, have asked administration to establish some guidelines and to cover these with the booster clubs, with the administrators for the activity funds. We're just delusion. We're bombarding our people out there with requests for funds. I mean, there are more requests out there than people can practically handle. So I think we're going to see possibly a change in some of this coming down. We're sitting back waiting for Brenda and Shelley and others to come up with some guidelines for some of these fundraisers and raffle requests. I have nothing against approving the ones that are on the list right now, but in the future, I think there will probably be some changes coming on those.
We've already been working on that protocol.
Okay. We also have the treasurer's report, and then the last item is the ratification approval of the payroll, which Curtis would sure like to see done. So with that said, yeah, everybody that gets, I don't know, the 4 board members up here, we don't really care.
We're doubling your salary.
Okay. So I would look for a motion to approve item 7, item 1, A through P.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion from Don and a second from? David. Comments or questions?
Well, what groups are these? Does it say somewhere on here? I'm not.
On the booster clubs and all
Yeah,
that? That was on the,
like L, who is asking for that?
It was on the consent agenda.
it's on the consent agenda. There was a bunch
Financial
of them.
reports.
The Booster Club fundraiser request, there was softball, there was soccer, there was Liberty.
High steppers.
High steppers, cheerleaders, I mean, golf tournaments, just
Soccer.
basketball.
Everything.
Everything.
I mean, 15 or 20 probably weren't there, Brenda. I mean, there's a bunch of them, and it seems like everybody is just piling on top of everybody else. That,
Who's asking for a raffle? All of them?
Varsity cheer.
Cheerleaders? What is it?
there were a couple of them, weren't there, Brenda?
Smoker?
One raffle.
I remember the cheerleaders was on there, another one, the football team's doing a pass punt something,
Okay.
and they're going
Punt, pass, and
to
kick.
sell
It's
tickets
national, isn't it?
I'll show you how to look at
be able to get
Huh?
to participate in that.
Show me how to look at that.
The car dealership.
I got a list here, I think. No, I don't, that's
That's
in the,
probably within the finance
yeah, that's,
documents.
well, yeah, it's in the back of the 160-page document. But there's a bunch of it. A lot of people are asking for money.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think we're bombarding our citizens, and they want to help with schools, but my goodness.
But they can only help so
Ought to be a
much.
limit.
And I talked to curriculum committee about it too, after our discussion from finance and property, so they're well aware.
So I think there will be some guidelines coming down, which is fine. I think the other key point, and Shelley made this in her other little comment, there's some of the policy changes. You can't do the event before the board approves it. It's just that simple. Whether it be a fundraiser or an activity fund, a car wash, a whatever, it can't be done until the board approves it.
Right.
And there's been some people breaking the rules on that.
Right.
We pulled one off the agenda this month that had already begun, so
Yeah.
it shut down.
And I got one changed.
Oh, well, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Next Saturday, and it'll be past Saturday, and they postponed it for 2 weeks to make sure the order delivery.
So with that, let's call for the vote on 7-1A through P.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye. Motion carries. Item 2, consider and take action on the estimate of needs for the fiscal year 2000. Commentary is that this is a financial document required by the state law to be approved by the Board of Education each year.
Motion to
Auditors put
approve.
it together. It's pretty standard.
Yeah, I make the motion to approve it.
Have a motion to approve. The second
I'll second.
from Judy. Comments or questions? Call for the vote.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 3, consider and take action on the district gifted education plan. There was a verbiage change, according to Amy, caused us to resubmit it, and therefore it was just minor little word changes, but that's why we have to get it. It's already been approved by the Oklahoma State Department of Education, and we, the board, now need to approve it. Anybody got any questions for Amy? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion from Judy and a second from?
David.
David. Call for the vote.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 4, consider and take action on the Gifted Advisory Committee. I believe Amy changed the committee members. They serve a 2-year term, and that causes us now to reapprove the program, correct?
Motion approved.
Have a motion from Don and a second from?
David.
David. Call for the vote.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Number 7, consider and take action on agreement with Super Holiday Tours for the Poe High Orchestra and Choirs to go to San Antonio, Texas. This is from April 2nd through 5th. It is my understanding that students will pay their own way. If we have enough turnout, total expenditure will be about $77,000, no expense to the district. There will be 3 buses, I believe, isn't it, Randy, that they're looking for coaches?
Oh my gosh, that's not very much.
They charter.
Yeah, charter. There's 3 of them for the $18,000 expenditure here. And this is only if there's enough students sign up for this.
Motion approved.
Motion from Don, second from
I'll second.
Judy. Call for the vote.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we need an executive session? Motion to, and vote to convene an executive session for the following purposes: to discuss the possible termination, reassignment, resignation, and employment of personnel on the attached detailed personnel report, to discuss negotiations, to discuss confidential conversations with the board's attorney concerning pending claims and litigation. Do I have a motion to move to executive session?
Yes. Second.
David, and a second from Don. Call for the vote.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye. Adjourn to executive session. Back in session. Recital by the board president that minutes of executive session were kept by the board minutes clerk and will remain confidential. Consider and take action on recommendations for termination, reassignments, resignations, and employment of personnel that was on the attached personnel list. Do I have a motion to approve number 9?
I approve number 9.
Have a
Second.
motion from David and a second from Don.
Oh, don't.
Call for the vote.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Motion carries. New business. Shelley.
We do have some new business. We received some terms of a contract between Ponca City Public Schools and the Ponca City Fire Department in regard to having an ambulance available at our home games. The Ponca City Fire Department is going to provide a standby ambulance for free, and it's a requirement that at a standby event that there are 2 EMTs available. Ponca City Public Schools will be paying the 2 EMTs $30 an hour for their time for 5 games, 5 home games throughout this school year.
I'll make a motion to approve that item.
I second.
Comments or questions? Call for the vote.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we have any other new business?
No.
How about a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Have a motion from Don and a second from Judy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Adjourned.